Peoples of the world, welcome back. It's Capital G bringing you Elish Norn, the newest version of the Praetor, probably the final version of this mono white Praetor that we're ever going to get. Story spoilers. But before we get into it, of course, if you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel, be sure to look me up on Discord, come join some of the groups that I have listed below, and also like and subscribe. And on that note, let us get into our list for Elish Norn and some of the stories of the day. So coming out of March of the Machines, which, by the way, this is being recorded on a Thursday. Friday night will be my first pre-release since Throne of Eldraine. For obvious reasons, could not make it to any of the pre-releases between then and now. But finally able to get to go to one of these, so I'll show off some of my pre-release polls in a future video. But for now, let us focus on this legendary 3/5 Phyrexian Praetor. She's got Vigilance, and whenever a source that opponent controls deals damage to you, or a permanent you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1. So it doesn't matter the amount of damage. If they deal 10 damage to you, this only triggers once, kind of deal. But still, it's a good way to deter people who want to go wide with Saplings, for example. Pay 3 mana, sacrifice 3 other creatures to exile Elish Norn, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. We can only activate this at sorcery speed, but if we manage to resolve this, she turns into a Saga, the Argent Etchings. And just that chapter 1, incubate 5 times and transform all of your incubator tokens, so you're adding at least 10 power to the board immediately when you successfully resolve this. Chapter 2, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike until end of turn. That makes your army very, very dangerous. And Chapter 3, destroy all other permanents except for artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians. Exile the Argent Etchings and return it to the battlefield face up. So this flips back into Elish Norn once we get to Chapter 3. Pretty amazing stuff. I really like this new cycle of Praetors. Very, very interesting, and a very different and unique design for them. Now, being Elish Norn, we are going to run her OG version, Grand Cenobite, which we could pull a new printing of in March of the Machines. And of course, Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, because we do have a few cool ETBs that we want to double up on. And, you know, being able to turn off our opponent's ability to use their ETBs would be pretty nice too, especially with battles running around now. Because that second static effect turns off our opponent's battles. So, actually some pretty good synergies, pretty good meta call here as well. Let's get into the rest of the list. Obviously, we're going to use some of our typical ramp pieces, because we want to be able to ramp out our commander and then be able to use her abilities. New cards like Basilica Skull Bomb will make an impact in Commander and in Pauper Commander. I will be doing another Pauper Commander deck for the channel. I do really enjoy the format. I haven't had a chance to play it over the past couple of weeks, but you'll be sure to see a lot of the new commons from this set. We're playing a little bit with Toxic. We're not really making Toxic a big thing. The reason I like this is because this makes more Phyrexian Mites every time you attack. Inspiring Statuary. Hey, we're spitting out artifacts. So let's improvise a little bit, shall we? It's especially handy for when we want to cast some of our bigger spells or defend our board. More on that as we get there. Now here's a spicy piece, the Power Conduit. I wanted to highlight this one because there are very, very few ways to remove lore counters from a saga. This is one of them, and this is a good one. Tap, remove a counter, any counter, from a permanent you control to choose one. Put a charge counter on an artifact, or put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. So in concept, once we flip over to the Argent Etchings, we can actually remove the first lore counter so that every turn we get 5 more incubate tokens and then flip them. Or, if you've got enough creatures on board, you can always remove the second lore counter and trigger that one turn after turn until your opponents are toast. So that's the kind of thing that this can do. You wouldn't be able to, you would not be able to respond to the to that third lore counter. Unfortunately, because of the way that's worded, it would exile itself regardless. But still, being able to make our creatures bigger while keeping lore counters off of our flipped commander, pretty cool. Of course, we could want to go the other direction. We might want to proliferate into it. So, Staff of Completion, for example. Tap, pay 3 life, proliferate is the main event here. Yes, we may very well just want to power into our second and third chapters. Because that third chapter, of course, is a board wipe, and it's going to take most of our opponent's creatures off the table. There might be a few rebel Phyrexian factions lying around across the table. You never know. They'll survive it. Everything else will be toast. So that's why I like to run a little bit of proliferate to speed up the process. Or maybe we could just double trigger Stronic Resonator. I forget if adding a lore counter is a triggered ability or not. Comment below if you know the answer to that. But the abilities that trigger when you add a lore counter, well, those are triggers. So those can be copied. So when you flip over to the Argent Etchings, for example, if you've got a couple extra mana, instead of 5 tokens, you've got 10. Running the 2 new swords, the Sword of Forge and Frontier for the pro-red, pro-green, and obviously the really cool triggers when you attack. Sword of Once and Future, this is fantastic. This is probably the number 3 sword behind Sword of Fire and Ice and Sword of the black-green one. I forget their names because I don't get to play with those. Sword of Fire and Ice I don't have the black-green one, so. But nonetheless, I think these are both fantastic swords to run. Throne of Geth, another way to proliferate, and this is super cheap to activate, just sacrifice another artifact. It turns out our incubate tokens are artifacts. So if we have to sacrifice one in order to speed up the process of flipping Elish Norn back to her front side and then flipping her back to the Argent Etchings, could be a thing. Also, just proliferating the counters on our tokens that do survive. Pretty sweet. Running the Weatherlight completed here, it should be pretty easy to get it to 4 and 7 Phyresis counters. Because once it's got 7 or more Phyresis counters, we draw cards. And even without the card draw, we still get some scries, so it'll help us focus focus through our deck, shall we say. Worn Power Stone is in there just to... I just wanted to highlight Worn Power Stone for a second. Not because it's a special card or anything, but I wanted to keep the deck somewhat affordable. So if you've got a Mana Crypt, run Mana Crypt instead here. Or you can run Mana Crypt as a supplement, either way. I didn't want to throw in a card that's, in spite of the number of printings it's had in recent years, still a $200 card. So here we are with the Worn Power Stone instead. Onto our creatures, mostly Phyrexian creatures. This one helps us transform our incubator tokens, and it gives us a little flying defense as well. Bladed Ambassador. I like how it's a 3/1 that we can protect by removing the all counter. This card is just disturbing to look at. Yeah, let's not forget about Dominaria. Dominaria United gave us Defiler of Faith. And it also, every time you cast a white spell, spits out some soldiers that we can sacrifice to our commander. So, great stuff there. What do we think of this? I know there's a whole episode that Gavin Varhay did on his YouTube show, Good Morning Magic, where he talks about having First Strike but only on your turn, and wondering if we should make a new keyword out of that or not. I mean, I don't think we need to do that, but I know that's one question that he asked. I think we're fine as is, but that's just me. Graz. This one I want to highlight as a nice spicy piece. Yes, it's 8 mana, but once our incubate tokens are flipped, well, their base power is 0/0. But once you throw Graz down, they all become 5/3s base. And they still have their +1/+1 counters, by the way. So, I think this is a way to just turn our dinky little army into massive, massive beaters. the indoctrination attendants. Yeah, just playing around with more incubate things. Of course, we're running Mondrak, because this doubles the amount of tokens that we get to create, which is something we definitely want to do, especially once our commander flips over. It's also super easy to protect this. It's 1 mana and sack 2 other artifacts or creatures in order to give this to give this indestructible. So yeah, who would have seen the day of like all of these awesome, like truly powerful mono white Phyrexians? If you remember back in the early stages of the game, Phyrexians just didn't happen in white. And we still didn't really see that many white Phyrexians in the Mirrodin Besieged blocks. So, Soulless Jailer, this I wanted to highlight. Permanent cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield, and players cannot cast non-creature spells from graveyards or exile. So this is another sort of meta call with the battles coming up. Because battles, if you manage to defeat a battle, you cast its backside. So this prevents that. It doesn't prevent, what's it called? It doesn't prevent like the battles that turn into creatures from being cast, but the non-creature ones definitely prevents that. Also, being a 0/4 for 2 mana comes down super fast and can do some early blocks for us. This is not a Phyrexian, it's adorable, but it draws us a card, so just some Sacrifice Father that we can dig through our deck a little bit more. Same here with the Wall of Omens. And Zen of Chronicler, hey, we're playing mono white, we'll never give our opponents cards from stuff that we're casting. But we're also getting 5 brand spanking new commander decks that you might run this against. And they have a bunch of multicolored cards last I looked. Next up, enchantments. We just have 3. We've got the Phyrexian Awakening, which gives all of our Phyrexians vigilance. Also an Incubate 4, which once we transform it, that's going to be one big Phyrexian. Running the Merv of Meletes for Chapter 1 gets us a basic into our hand. So it's just 2 mana, essentially draw a card. Yes, you're drawing a blank essentially, but in the early game it ensures that we hit our land drop. Restoration of Ijanjo does the same thing, but can also potentially reanimate one of our permanents. One of our less expensive permanents. It could be the land, or it could be one of our smaller creatures. So I thought this was a pretty handy add. This one does flip into a creature once you get to your Chapter 3, the Architect of Restoration, which is an excellent attacker or blocker in its own right, at least until we flip over our commander. Unfortunately, this is not a Phyrexian. It will go away if we get to Chapter 3 on the Argent Edgings. But until that time, it's going to put in a ton of work. Instants and sorceries. So one of the big finishers, of course. If we control our commander as we cast a spell, it doesn't matter which side is facing, by the way. So we could be on the Argent Etching side, or we could be on the Elish Norn side of the card. If that's on the field, we get to choose both modes here, and this is usually a game-winning spell. Charge of the Mites gives us some more tokens. Cut Short. I like the idea of having a spell that we can cast for free. And yes, we can easily cast this for free by tapping 2 or 3 of our creatures. Disenchant, Enlightened Tutor, so on and so forth. So Flawless Maneuver, just going to highlight this. Again, doesn't matter which side our commander is facing, so long as it's on the battlefield, we can cast this for free. But we do have 4 of these. So Flawless Maneuver, of course, the only one of these that we can cast for free, but we do have many ways of making sure our board stays indestructible. The last thing we want to do is spend the time and resources to flip over Elish Norn only to get board wiped ourselves. So that's why we're running things like Make a Stand in here. Rebuff the Wicked. Another thing we don't want to have happen is someone, go for the throat at our commander when we're trying to flip her. So if somebody tries to remove our commander once we've activated her ability, because it is sorcery speed, we can't just do it willy-nilly or activate it a second time in response. We don't get that chance. So rebuff the Wicked, and it got a fresh printing in Dominaria Remastered, by the way. 1 white counters a spell that targets a permanent you control. It's the only one of these white counterspells we're running in this particular list, but it catches people sleeping each and every time. Scroll Shift, the new Blink spell. Secure the Wastes. This we can cast at its speed, just spit out an army when we need it, if we are in the late game. Or we can just kind of spit out an army out of nowhere and use them as Sacrifice Father to activate our commander. Surge of Salvation essentially acts as a second rebuff to Wicked, because it does the thing we want it to do. And also, it says prevent all damage that black or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. So this can actually protect our board from, say, Blasphemous Act. So that's something to keep in mind with this card. Am I running enough creature removal? No, this is it. Probably not. I probably need a bit more creature removal, but it was that and Cut Short that we saw earlier. There's the Fiery Protection and Unbreakable Formation, so that's numbers 3 and 4 of our Protect the Whole Team spells. Also running at Vanish into Eternity. This can exile artifacts, enchantments, battles for 3 mana. And if we need to get a creature with this, it's expensive at 6, but it gets everything else for 3. Sorceries now. Running Battle Screech just to spit out some birds that we can sacrifice. Slaughter the Strong. It's a nice little early board wipe if someone's getting real big real fast. Just after we flipped our commander, if we don't want to wait for Chapter 3, we can cast this. Sram's Expertise spits out some servos. 3 servos, that's the magic number. We can sacrifice all 3 of them to flip our commander. Son of the Gateway, Sunfall. Now, obviously if we're casting this, that means our opponent's got way out of hand. But still, Incubate X means we get 1 humongous Incubate token out of the deal. So totally worth doing, in my opinion. And of course the White Sun's Twilight. Sorcery speed spits out a ton of mites. Of course, if we manage to put X as 5 or more, it also acts as a board wipe, so love the flexibility there. 35 lands in total. Since there are some cards in the deck that like the fact that we have artifacts, we're going to run the Ancient Den as one of our lands. Castle Ardenvale, love it just because it's a great card, spits out some tokens if we need it. Darksteel Citadel. A couple of the cycling lands because we're mono white, so Desert of the True and Drifting Meadow. Ijanjo Castle. Ijanjo Seat of the Empire. Guildless Commons. We like this because some of our lands, it'd be nice to bounce it back to our hand so we can cycle it away, or we can use Ijanjo Seat of the Empire, for example. The Inventor's Fair. This lets us tutor out a key artifact, ideally the Power Conduit. Karn's Bastion, just for cheap proliferate. The Path of Ancestry, we're running Phyrexian Tribal for all intents and purposes, so getting the free scry off of this is worth having a line coming in tapped. 21 Plains, a Secluded Step, the Fair Basilica, and the Mycosynth Gardens. Being able to copy a non-token artifact. Again, the ideal target would be probably Power Conduit, or it could be Stronic Resonator. Either way, this is just fantastic to get a second powerful artifact on our side of the board. And on that, we've got it all wrapped up. Elish Norn, very powerful mono white commander. We'll see how popular this version of Elish is. Again, the big risk, of course, is that activated ability. If someone has an instant speed response, we need to be able to defend it. So be very careful with that. Otherwise, well, like I said, pre-release. Today is Thursday. I'm going to an event tomorrow, which is the Friday. So good luck on pre-release. Have fun with the new precons. I'll have a closer look at the precons at some point. Not sure which one or two, if any, I'm going to scoop up. Don't have the resources to get all 5, but I'll definitely try to get at least some of them. On that, enjoy your weekend, have fun at pre-release, and we will see you all again next time. Bye for now.